What's up, residents? Jacob here. The Godzilla franchise has been around for a long time, like a really long time. The series itself is nearing 65 years in existence, 20-some years longer than Star Wars has even been around. The upcoming King of the Monsters film is generating even more buzz around this beloved franchise, and is bringing up tons of questions. One question is, with all these titans coming out of long and deep slumbers, how long have they been around? More specifically, how old is Godzilla? Sometimes these deep questions are thought to be better left to mystery, which is fine, but we here at Dangerville are all about this kind of stuff, so make sure to become a resident and subscribe if you fancy these videos. Before we get to MonsterVerse Godzilla, we have to give some respect to the legacy adaptations of the iconic monster, starting with the Showa Era, where it all began. The lore of the Showa Era states that Godzilla is simply an ancient amphibious reptile of sorts, coming from a species that has long been forgotten, stating that this species of creature was around at least during the time of the dinosaurs, and upon the meteor colliding with Earth, all remaining members of this species were forced to retreat to the deepest depths of the oceans. So this presents some curious points regarding the age of the Godzillas that appeared during the Showa Era. If they were all a part of a certain species, this could mean that the Godzillas featured in the series were not that old at all, or at least not dinosaur age old. If the species escaped to live in the deep oceans, they could have very well continued their normal lives, breeding and producing offspring like normal, possibly meaning that each Godzilla in the era may have only been thousands or just a few million years old. Now, a thought going through some of your heads may be, if there is an entire species of these gigantic monsters, how would they not have been noticed sooner? Well, the Showa Era Godzillas are all claimed to have been mutated creatures brought on by the atomic activity of the mid-1900s. Meaning that the giant animals that appeared on the lands of Japan were originally much smaller, and nowhere near as violent and destructive. The Millennium Era of Godzilla films may have been separated from the Showa by a few decades, but they are counted as sequels of sorts to the original films, as the Millennium adaptations were all said to be from the same species as the original Godzillas. So the same rules of age apply to the Millennium Godzillas. Is it Godzillas or is it Godzilla? Go tell me what you think it is, residents. The Heisei series went ahead and had to be the different one, starting a whole new batch of lore for the famous monster. In this era, Godzilla was the result of a mutated dinosaur called the Godzillasaurus. Original, I know. Thought to be extinct, this surviving dinosaur was stranded on one of the islands in the Pacific, and was caught in the middle of a raging war. This is when the Godzillasaurus was mutated by the radioactive energy and went on to become Godzilla. This series had time-traveling people known as Futurians, also original, who went back in time to try and remove the dinosaur from the path of destruction, thus stopping it from ever becoming the monster Godzilla. It didn't work. The lore states that they went back to 1944, so if this Godzillasaurus followed typical thought-of dinosaur age patterns, it probably was at the most 100 years old due to its large size, making the Heisei Godzilla possibly less than 150 years old. Before we move on to the finale of the video, I know that there are other variations of Godzilla, Shin and Zilla for example, but since those monsters only had one film that they appeared in, we won't go into thoughts on them much. Zilla is a mutated iguana from the 50s, and Shin follows a similar origin to the Showa Millennium Godzillas. Alright, time for this sexy song, bitch. So Legendary's Godzilla has probably the most detailed origin lore of all. Both in the movie and in the extended lore, Godzilla is said to be an alpha predator from a time when Earth's radiation was much, much higher. The lore states specifically that Godzilla is at least from the Permian Age, a time before the dinosaurs, 300 to 250 million years ago. So MonsterVerse Godzilla is at least that old, but there is some evidence to support him being even older. The Permian Age was part of an even larger segment of Earth's history known as the Paleozoic Era, ranging from 541 to 250 million years ago. This is the time when the greatest influx of life on Earth ever happened. New creatures of all varieties were popping up left and right. The Paleozoic age was broken into smaller sections, with the Permian being the last. So let's go to a time known as the Devonian Age, 416 to 359 million years ago, also known as the Age of the Fish. What makes this time period important regarding Godzilla are a couple big steps in the evolution of life on Earth. First off, this is when the first trees and forests began to grow, reaching heights that were never seen before on the planet, earning the time period another nickname, the Greenhouse Age. Another miracle of life during this time was the introduction of a certain animal on land. Known as the tetrapods, these animals were the first variant of amphibians to come into existence. So why does this matter with Godzilla? Well, we mentioned earlier in the video how Godzilla is an amphibious creature, and we know that he was from a time when Earth was rich in everything needed to grow supermassive stuff, just like the trees of the Devonian Age. So if Godzilla was a matured alpha predator during the Permian Age, then if I had to make a guess, I would say that he was born or originally came into existence during the Devonian Age, placing the MonsterVerse Godzilla's age to be somewhere between 416 and 359 million years old. Once again, this is all just educated theories on a fictional character, but there is something so enjoyable about mixing real-life history and science with these made-up characters. And that's a big reason why Godzilla has always been so special to myself, Alistair, and so many others. He's not just a monster. He's a living and breathing creature that could very well exist on some other alien world out there. Real or not, the story of Godzilla is one similar to ours. One full of evolution, violence, and the willingness to survive. Residents, if you want to learn about the ages of the other monsters in the Godzilla universe, like Rodan, Mothra, or King Ghidorah, maybe even Kong, let us know. I thank you all for watching today's video, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did making it. As always, this has been Jacob, and peace out.